So part of this is, of course, to give more attention to the present moment, because the more you think, the more future you generate. And the more attention you give to the present moment, the less thinking. Because to be really present, you don't think about it, you just are with it, give it attention. I recommend the little things of life to be more attentive to all the little things that make up every hour of every day, every minute, every hour, and give them more attention. Walking, steps, one step at a time. Objects that you're handling, all the time you're handling objects in your life. You're always touching something, putting something here and there. Is everything that you handle just a means to an end, or are you able to just appreciate the simple presence of even of a so-called inanimate object? Contemplation also of all the lovely things that make up your environment, part of your environment. For example, if I were sitting here alone, let's say I'm waiting for everybody to arrive, I might be sitting here looking, of course, at the flower, sense the stillness, and then there's a glass table here, and then there's a glass of water here, and there's a clock and a bell and tissues, and they all reflect the light in different ways. There's a little bit of a rainbow effect in the glass of water here, and then the lights are reflected on the bells, almost like a mirror, and there's the clock ticking away. It's a beautiful scene. Sometimes you go to an art gallery, well, not so much with modern art, but a very favorite thing would be still life artists. And it took a while in art before they discovered the artists in the history of art, before they discovered the seemingly insignificant things and started to give attention to those. Before that happened, they were very much interested in the huge things, the saints or the kings or the huge battle scenes or the big, they painted those things, or the important people, or some dramatic thing, volcanic eruption or whatever, a fire. And then at some point they started to discover the beauty and the incredible sense of the quality that is in the little things. They started painting, for example, simple people. The Dutch artists, perhaps I'm not that knowledgeable about artists, but the famous Dutch paintings show it's not so much big, important people. They show simple people, a woman in the kitchen baking bread, simple people sitting around the table eating a very simple meal, and there's the light, incredible light effects light comes through the window, and there's an incredible sense of presence and aliveness in the painting. And this is a scene that in normal life you would never have, unless you're really very conscious. Nobody would have stopped and said, "Oh, isn't that amazing? These people are sitting around a table eating a simple meal, and there's light coming through the window." Nobody would have done that. Perhaps after more of these artists depicted relatively seemingly insignificant things, perhaps it motivated some people to give more attention to that. But even now it's still People very much overlook that, and you overlook then a large part of your life. You don't give it attention. When I say give attention, there's an element of appreciation of everything, of the little things. And you begin to realize that your entire life consists mainly of little things. Even if you're a VIP, it still consists mainly, you're always sitting somewhere, standing somewhere, looking around, handling things, going from here to there, either on a bus or your private jet. And this giving attention, that is sometimes called gratitude. That's kind of part of it, this appreciation. But I don't necessarily use the word gratitude too often, because it implies that you say to somebody, "Oh, thank you." But there's a simple appreciation of the isness of things, of their presence. So you no longer regard almost continuously your entire environment as a means to an end. And what's the end? You need to get to some future moment where suddenly everything is going to be better than now. And so you're always on your way. It's a stepping stone to the next moment, and every object that you handle has only utilitarian value, but has no value in itself, is never appreciated for its beingness. And then you do the same to human beings. They're only regarded, what can they do for me now? How do they fit into my schemes, into my plans? Because there's a future orientation continuously, which is the mind, because there is no future. It's created by the mind. It becomes extremely enjoyable to be contemplating the little things that surround you. Then there is something, yes, there is an element of gratitude that comes with it. This appreciation is an element where you appreciate the sense-perceived world. This is an aspect of reality. It's not the deepest aspect of reality, but it is the surface of the ocean, and it's beautiful. And that also means it's not just when you are quietly contemplating, it's also when you're going from A to B to perform some action, you're going to buy something, going to the whatever it is, post office. Appreciate the journey and every step of the journey, and look around so that the 10 minutes of going to the shop or driving to the shop or taking your bicycle to the shop isn't completely wasted and reduced to means to an end. And you can actually, that every moment is significant, and ultimately it's only ever the one moment. And then this waiting game comes to an end, waiting for the big break. That's an expression. I don't know what breaks, but waiting for whatever it is. Of course, you have a goal. You may have a goal in life, and you're moving towards it. But in the meantime, this is now, and you know you're moving towards it. It becomes very enjoyable to be wherever you are when you have this ability to contemplate the little things, both when you're passively contemplating or when you are moving, in being engaged with things. When you think you have a choice, and suddenly you become present, that means presence has chosen to come through you. So I sometimes say that you can choose, once a certain level of presence is in you, you can choose to be present. Like now, I can choose to go into my mind and start thinking about my life. Where am I coming from? Where am I going? Or I can choose to be reactive when things happen. Well, it looks as if I didn't have a choice, but many people still don't have a choice. The reaction comes. They're taken over by the reaction. But when there's a certain degree of presence in you, you have a choice. You might forget that you have a choice, but you have a choice. This is how it looks like, looked at it from the outside, that you have a choice. It's true. But if you look at it from the inside, when you think you have a choice to be present, presence is choosing to come through you. When you think you have a choice, and suddenly you become present, that means presence has chosen to come through you. Nevertheless, it is helpful to feel that you have a choice from this perspective, the outside perspective. That's what presence wants you to feel, that you have a choice. Ultimately, you are present, you are the one consciousness. So it's not that you don't choose presence, it's just a helpful perspective, a temporary perspective. So when you are dealing with a difficult person or an unconscious person, which is the same thing, an obnoxious person, unconscious person, angry person, unconscious person, then you have a choice. You can be drawn into their unconsciousness, can easily slip. Any one person, one angry or upset or deeply negative unconscious person can pull an entire room full of people, like let's say there's a committee meeting of 20 people, and one of those 20 people is and attacks others. This one person can pull almost virtually everybody into his or her deeply unconscious negative state. This is how contagious a negative state can be. One very unconscious person in a room can do that. You could almost also say that sometimes a few very unconscious people, and this happened before, can create an entire war if because they draw others in. This could, perhaps that was how the First World War started. Nobody exactly knows what were they all fighting about. It started with one person killing somebody in what later became Yugoslavia. But I don't know the details, it's too much, don't want to go into that. One so-called terrorist or whatever killed somebody, and that became the First World War. So millions and millions killed in a room. The same thing. One unconscious person can pull everybody into, and before you know it, they're all fighting and shouting at each other. So there is the danger there, because you need to know that. But if you remember that there you have a choice at that moment to be drawn into that or to be there as an aware presence, then you can be continue to be there as an aware presence, and then that could make all the difference to the energy field in the room. It could dissolve the unconsciousness of that one deeply unconscious person. Just one person who remains present. And sometimes it's very helpful. You can have a group of people discussing things, an organization, whatever they're doing, and one person there who can be, as we could call it, an anchor for presence, can help the entire group to remain relatively present while they are discussing whatever it is that they need to discuss. That is a wonderful thing when you realize that possibility. Or if you are in a group of people and you are there as a non-reactive presence, and if the others in that group are so deeply unconscious that they go on and go off into violent conflict, mentally, emotionally violent, might even come to blows. Often you see in certain countries in parliaments, they discuss something and then suddenly they jump up and start hitting each other. And some countries they don't quite hit each other, but they get close. There's a lot of shouting. Can be quite amusing, but so if you often one person can make a lot of difference, so-called persons, not the person. And if you don't affect the energy field, then very quickly you will not remain where you are. If your state of consciousness is completely incompatible with your surroundings are so deeply unconscious that there's no way it could affect those, then a separation will happen, like oil and water. You will find yourself being removed from there. That just happens. It can happen with yourself waking up one morning and saying, okay, I'm not going in, and this is it. Or find yourself walking out, goodbye. Or they call you and say, we don't need you, I'm afraid we'll have to let you go. You're too conscious for this organization. You don't fit in at all anymore. I don't know what happened to you. You're disrupting everything here. Although this is not a retreat as such, I suggest that you use your time here, make it into a kind of a retreat, and all that it means is your main interest is in consciousness while you are walking in this lovely small town, looking at things, talking to people. Be the presence rather than the person that needs to interpret everything. Be the presence behind the awareness. Be the awareness behind the sense perceptions. Like now. You cannot improve this moment by adding unnecessary thought to it. What thought would you want to add to this moment? It just detracts from the aliveness and beauty of this moment. The mind, of course, can't sense that, and it'll say, what do you mean? What's beautiful about this moment? Well, everything. The stillness in this room, the spaciousness, the lights, the beings, your being. And the consciousness that you are, without which none of this would be, could be, sensing yourself as the conscious presence. That's the ocean. Yes, you're also a person with a body and a personalized sense of self. That's the ripple. So you go from being a ripple to being ocean. And then you can be both. So that you no longer have, you can be either meditating and very aware, and usually the people go then, I'm practicing mindfulness. Or they go about their daily life. I've done mindfulness for 20 minutes. What do I have to do now? Oh my gosh, can't deal with this. The emails, I haven't answered all these emails. And then 8 hours later, time for more mindfulness. It's better than no mindfulness, of course. At least you have it there. If you have it, maybe you're just trying. But bring it into every moment so that you have whatever it is you're doing, and always a sense of yourself as the presence. And this is wonderful when you can feel your presence. It's not yours, but I call it yours. Because the moment I say your presence, I've created a duality. There's you and there's the presence. But there is no duality there. You are the presence. Language creates duality. So that's fine. So feel the presence. Right now, you are both a person, but to be a person, you need to remember who you are. Of course, you need to think about me and my life. Then you're a person. Or at this very moment, you can also be the presence. When there's little or no conceptualization in your mind, but just an arising of what before was the background comes into the foreground. And then you start thinking without losing a sense of presence in the background. Then thinking is actually not bad at all. It's only when thinking becomes self-serving and you lose yourself in it, then it gets very problematic. It creates one problem after another, pretending, wanting to solve problems. That's self-serving thinking. So let's practice now here, being the presence, no thought, and sensing how liberating that is, not needing to know anything beyond that. No conceptual knowledge required for that at all. And if some concept is needed, somebody approaches you, you're just looking around, somebody comes and says, can you tell me how to get to such and such a street? Then the mind starts, and it's fine. It can be a more playful thing where you simply look around and acknowledge the presence of what's around you and feel your own presence in the background. It's not a serious business now, I have to practice presence. No, just don't even call it anything. Just be at ease in the present moment. There's only this moment. Don't try to be present, just be at ease in the now, and then look around and sense, and it's fine, and then thoughts come. Don't have to stay there. No, and then thoughts come, and thoughts go around your mind for a few minutes, and then again you take some steps and you're present again, walking from here to there, making a cup of tea, looking out of the window, and then thoughts come again. So you intersperse the day or your life with presence. And also when you're traveling, either, no matter when you go to work, wherever you go, whether you walk or drive or use a bicycle or use a train or use a bus, it's a wonderful opportunity for just go within and be present as you travel. Whenever you're waiting, just be present. There's no effort involved at all. The effort is not being present, is more effortful. That's where all effort arises. You don't use willpower to be present, just an arising alertness. Don't demand that it should be there for long periods of time. That's frustrating. And then you say, oh, it's gone. I can't do it anyway. Screw it. I'm quoting you. And that's the mind talking, not the presence talking. It's the mind saying it's useless to be present. It's too hard work. I can't do it. I can't stay there anyway. These are thoughts that arise in your mind and you believe them. But they are thoughts that are designed to take you out of presence and to prevent you from returning to presence. They're not the truth. They are created by your mind to take you out of presence, that's all. So the mistake you made is you believed in those thoughts. So even the thought, screw it, is not the true thought. As Byron Katie would say, how do you know that's true? It's not a true thought, it's a thought that's there to take you out of presence and to make sure that you don't go back to it. And then another thought comes and says, what's the point? It's not working for me. Maybe it's working for others, but it's not working for me. All kinds of, you may be familiar with that kinds of self-talk in the head. Be very aware of what kind of self-talk happens in your head. Very interesting, because you can learn so much about the conditioning of your mind by listening to the way in which you talk to yourself. And everybody talks to themselves, and some people use the first person singular and talk as I, and many people use the you. They talk to themselves, addressing themselves as you. You are useless, aren't you? Why can other people do it, but you can't? Who is talking to whom? So you're creating a split in your mind, and one part of your mind talks the other part of your mind and calls it you. It's amazing. So recognize that the self-talk rarely speaks the truth. It's a form of conditioning that goes on in your mind, and it is associated with the ego, which does not want to go away. It wants to stay in charge, stick around. It knows what to say to take you out. But if you don't believe in every thought that arises, especially thoughts concerning presence, then you're free. The thoughts may still come, but you can say, oh, there goes a thought. You no longer comment on the thought, and this is interesting. You become, from the awareness, you can see and recognize the thought as a thought that your mind throws up without calling it anything. It's a bit like holding a mirror up to something that arises. That's the awareness. The mirror doesn't judge what arises, because if you criticize the thought that you just had, it's just more self-talk. And even if you say, why are you always having this self-talk? You should stop, you should by now, you should be beyond that self-talk. You've been doing spiritual work for years and you still can't get out of your self-talk. What's wrong with you? More of it. Yeah. So when you become aware of your self-talk, don't formulate judgments around the self-talk, you get just more of it. Don't criticize yourself. Hold up a mirror to it, and from there there's a knowing there in that awareness. You know that this is self-talk, and you know that it's not true without having to tell yourself through words that this is not true and this is self-talk. You just know. So this is in the same way that you can know, you can look at a plant or a flower. You know it's a flower, but you don't have to tell yourself this is a flower. You know it without formulating any words in your mind, any concepts. You can look at the sky, beautiful, vast, blue. You don't have to say to yourself, this is the vast blue sky and I'm looking at it. That's knowing through concepts and words. But there's another kind of knowing that does not require words. You just know. And because you do not limit what you are perceiving through concepts, you can actually sense a greater depth in that which you are perceiving, whether it's the flower or the sky. You can sense a depth in it that goes beyond what you see on the surface of your sense perceptions. The depth becomes obscure to you when you look at everything through mental concepts. When you say, this is a beautiful, vast sky, you're still limiting yourself. The true perception does not happen until the words disappear and there's only the awareness and the perception. And in that, the sky is more than just the sky. It suddenly, because every concept reduces it. And you think the word sky is the sky. You know the painting, I think it's by Magritte, the painting of an apple, and he writes underneath, this is not an apple. Of course it isn't, it's the painting of an apple. In the same way that a word or a concept is not it. Krishnamurti said, when you teach a child the name of the bird, from then on the child will never see that bird again. Because the child then begins to substitute the concept for the direct perception, and there's a depth to the direct perception in which the bird is more than a bird. There's a depth to the bird, and you realize that life form is more than a bird. It just appears as a bird. And what I'm trying to put into words comes from a perception that is beyond words. That's why it's so difficult. So you see, there's a depth to the flower and the sky and the bird that cannot be there when you look at it through concepts. You can feel the aliveness of the bird. You can sense its connectedness to the totality. You can sense its sacredness. You can sense it's beautiful. You could never realize that through concepts. So don't believe in the words that your mind throws up and that take you out of presence. That's the main lesson for you here, and it's a lesson for everybody, because everybody is burdened, and some people are plagued and tortured by their self-talk in a way that would be regarded as indefensible cruelty if somebody close to you did it to you all the time on a daily basis. I don't know what terms they use, the legal terms when you get a divorce, cruelty or inhuman cruelty or whatever, that would apply to your mind. that you have to live with when you are not aware enough. For perhaps not as bad for you. It just takes you out of presence. But for many other people, the self-talk can be extremely destructive and can make your life miserable, absolutely miserable. You don't know that's only the self-talking, and you think that's your life. You think your life is miserable, not realizing it's your self-talk that makes your life miserable. I don't know whether to laugh or cry at this. Absolutely vital lesson: hold up a mirror, the mirror of awareness, to your self-talk, so that you realize it's no more than self-talk. In particular, if you've had predominantly negative, or even 50%, and many people have 80 to 90% negative self-talk, then realize this is stuff my mind produces, and not verbally. You don't have to realize it verbally. It's the mirror of awareness, and you look and you know. Wow. And I've lived with that for so many years. And I've survived miraculously, even with that dreadful self-talk in the head. And because when you no longer identify with it, it begins to subside. It's only when you only empower it again and again, when it takes you over so completely, that you identify, it becomes you. So I would suggest that the universe is engaged in there's an evolutionary impulse behind the arising of life forms throughout the universe, and that is the greater expression of consciousness. And consciousness is the light that emanates from the source of all life into this dimension. The source is not part of this dimension. So when you sense that I amness, then what you sense is your conscious connection with the three-letter word, your conscious connection with source. And then the amazing thing is, this realization, although that what you realize is timeless, it deepens, because there's a paradox. It looks like a paradox, because in this dimension time operates, but we're talking about accessing the timeless dimension. But in this dimension, it is gradually here, your realization of the timeless dimension deepens. And then you can sense its power. That there is an underlying vast power that behind it all, not egoic power. It's the power of life itself. And you can sense that it is the Tao, as the ancient Chinese called it, the Tao that underlies it. You can sense it within yourself as yourself. And it is within and without, both. There's ultimately no difference. This is the Tao. This is what ancient cultures, no matter where you look on the planet, all ancient European cultures and all tribal cultures, South America, Asia, Australia, they all had a deep sense of the universe had embodied a presence, and everything in the universe is more than what you perceive with your senses. It embodies a presence. There's a soul in the universe. In antiquity, the ancients in Latin called it anima mundi, the soul of the world. In other words, there is an underlying, we could say, vast intelligence that gives rise to the billions of life forms that are gradually evolving. And this vast intelligence is beyond, it's transcendent to this physical realm, but it gives life to this physical realm. And that is what all ancient cultures could sense that still. And sometimes it's called panpsychism, which means that pan means all or everything. Panpsychism means everything has a soul. Everything. The ancient Romans believed that also. Australian Aborigines, North American Indians, Africa, everywhere. That why did they all believe it? Was it just they came up with a mental thing in different cultures that have no contact with each other? They came up with this mental thing that, let's think. No, the thinking mind was not as active yet, and the ego was not as developed yet as it is in contemporary humans. So they still had this ability to sense it in an obscure. Sometimes they misinterpreted it a bit, but they could sense there was something there that was alive. They inhabited a universe that was alive. Then the 19th century came with materialistic science and theory of evolution. Of course, there is evolution, but the evolution is not hazard. It's not chance, pure chance. It is like there's an intelligence behind it, and that intelligence operates in you. So I'm just saying those things to give a little bit of context, but for practical purposes, it's not even necessary to go there. For practical purposes, what is necessary is here and now, as much as you can, to access that dimension in your life, which is always brings you into the present moment. And whether meditation is good for you, you have to see whether can be helpful, can also be misleading. How can it be misleading? Meditation can be misleading if you approach it in not the right way. Now, what does that mean? You do not approach meditation in the right way if you regard the practice of meditation is something that you do. It becomes a doing. You can even put it in your calendar. To appointment, lunch appointment, meeting at such a time, catching the train at such and such a time. 9:30 meditation. So many things to do during the day, and then the last doing is the meditation. But meditation is not something that you ultimately you can't do it. If you have this mind pattern that meditation is something that you do, there comes the barrier to the realization of being, because being is timeless here and now. It already is. So if you okay, let's do a meditation. Okay, I've done 15 minutes now, another 5. Okay, now what's the next thing? But the realization of being, you have to relinquish even the idea of doing. So, and that can't be the realization of being is accessible at any moment, which is now. Oh, and how is it accessible? A brief cessation in the stream of thinking, not because you've fallen below thinking, but you've risen above thinking. There's that space again. And gradually you learn to access that dimension, to be rooted in that dimension in your daily life, rather than having separate compartments. Compartment for being, no, I'm just going to be now. And then another compartment for doing. But you bring the two together so that even when you do become active, you don't lose touch with the dimension of depth, with a background presence. You can sense your presence, so to speak. It's not yours, we just call it yours. You can sense your presence in the background while you do in the foreground. And you talk to somebody, and you listen, you ask a question, the person answers, and while you listen to the other person, you can sense the presence. You don't necessarily have to prepare the next thing to say. You can just be present. Now, what that presence is, a space of alertness, alert spaciousness. It's a beautiful gift you can give to another human being, the gift of alert presence. You also give them attention through that. There's a connection that happens when alert presence arises, instead of interaction happening exclusively on the personality level, which is sooner or later leads to trouble and conflict. You might have noticed, especially if you start living with a personality, some other person, it's very difficult. So interaction does not just take place on the level of the conditioned personalities. There is a deeper dimension that is at work. And then you connect through that, the presence with the other. Oh, that is beautiful. And then you can even, in many cases, you can overlook the sometimes strange ways in which the other person behaves according to their conditioning. You can kind of look through it quite often. Sometimes it may be so dense, the conditioning, that you can't look through it, but these are exceptional cases. Maybe we all know some of these exceptional cases, but so beautiful. And if you interact with nature in that way, it deepens the way in which you perceive the natural world. It's not almost as if it's much better than any drug like acid could do for you. I tried it once and I said, no, my normal state of consciousness is much better. And the other is, another great thing you want to practice is, and this is so important, awareness of sense perceptions without labeling. You can do it anywhere, in the middle of the city, in the country, on the beach, at home, in the office, in a restaurant, in a cafe. Let's take cafe as an example. You're having a cup of tea or coffee, and you sit in a cafe, and use it, instead of going to your phone, use it as a spiritual practice. It's a cafe practice, but you don't have to drink coffee with it. You can drink anything. It's a public place, and you sit there for 10 minutes, let's say, looking around at all what's happening around you, all the people and what they are doing and sitting. Most of them will be on their phones, so it's okay, but you are not. And you look, and here's the room, and you might see what's happening in the street also. And as you sit there, You get in touch with your presence, the sense of presence and beingness. Maybe feel the inner body and feel your own presence, the presence of consciousness, you as consciousness. And then you look around and you listen, there are sounds, and you look. And your practice is not to label your sense perceptions mentally. In other words, you're just looking, and as you look, feel the presence of yourself. And then look around in thoughtless awareness. It's a wonderful practice. And you will love what you see, because every human is an expression of the one life in their own way. Every human is quite lovely and lovable, but you don't have to say that in your mind. It's the realization of the aliveness of every human. But you cannot sense the aliveness of every other human if you cannot sense your own aliveness. So your own presence or aliveness is the basis for sensing the aliveness of other humans, and by doing that, you love them in a way. Not the clinging love that says, oh, I want you. You're quite happy with them doing what they do. You don't need to wanting to interact necessarily. You just be there. You just love them. They're all manifestations of the one life. And they're all so different. Isn't that amazing? Not a single human is the same. Out of the billions, they're all different. That's wonderful. And yet, the essence in each one is the one essence that is one with your essence. And you can sense that if you don't label them. So that's a lovely practice to enjoy the aliveness of things in a limited space. If you sit, you're in a relatively passive situation when you sit in a cafe. There's a coffee, you might be tea, whatever you are drinking, but you're not doing much. So it's relatively easy to be there as the presence. And you don't have to do it in a way that people necessarily notice, or they probably won't notice anyway because they're on their phones, they don't see anything. But if they happen to be looking up from their phones, they might look a bit weird that you are not on your phone. There's something wrong with you. So that's one place. Another place, of course, is in nature, and that's a wonderful way to practice also. Choose a spot, you stand or sit somewhere, and lying is not immediately advisable if you lie down, because that can easily take you below thought. You want to remain above thought. So you stand or sit, and then nature. That might even be easier than in a cafe, because in a cafe there's lots of things still happening that stimulate thought, because people are talking, or the general energy field is mind. If you go into nature, you're in no mind, and then the same way you perceive in that alert awareness the miraculous life forms around you that have no name. If you don't give them names, have no name. And if you don't obscure things with names, you can sense their inherent aliveness. They speak to you. So there's another dimension that reveals itself to you that is everywhere in nature, that you don't know when you're stuck in your mind and label things. And that's a beautiful way of practicing presence. Don't destroy nature by gradually you're sitting under a tree in this miraculous place, the same place where the Buddha found enlightenment, sitting under a tree, and you get out your phone. It's such a wonderful opportunity. Under this, trees are wonderful beings. And you sit under the tree, and there's the vastness of the sky and nature, and to just be there in that moment, not as a person, but as a conscious presence. Wow. And don't overdo it. Even if you just do it for 10 minutes, just be there Watch. So the practice is sense perception without mentally labeling them. It requires an alertness. It's a choice. You make that choice and that's a shift in consciousness. And every time you do that, you are not there as a person. The person is kind of temporarily disappeared. You are there as a conscious presence, as the deeper presence of life itself. And that's beautiful. So that's a practice, same thing, practice nature, practice in a public place. You can practice at every traffic light. If you're driving, every time the light is red, practice presence. Red light, presence, and look at the beauty of that red light. It's not ultimately everything is natural because that's energy too. It's a manifestation of energy, the red traffic light. It has an aliveness too. It sounds weird, but it does. And so there's the light and it's telling you to be present. People have worked out, I don't know who did it, if somebody reaches the age of 70 and they start driving at the age of 20, somebody worked out how many, unfortunately I don't retain a lot of information in my mind, so you would have spent a year or so or more of your life sitting at traffic lights. And for most people that is something they don't like. But why not choose that, be present. Another thing I mentioned, little activities, washing your hands, be there completely, takes you out of your mind, sensory perception, water, beautiful. Maybe scent of soap, and you give it complete attention, which means you're not thinking, you're just experiencing. Elevator, lift, elevator, you're waiting for it. You can either get out your phone or you can just be choosing presence. And the more you choose it, the easier it gets and the deeper you go into presence. And then you realize after a while, you didn't really choose. Presence chose you. Presence wanted to come through you, because sometimes people ask me, well, who is choosing presence? Well, it's just one way of looking at it. Presence, when you get out of the way as a person, presence is there. That is, so use all those things to transform your life. Use the opportunities of obstacles when they arise, seeming obstacles. Accept each moment as if you had chosen it. That's vital. So I've given you these portals out of the mind and into presence, and of course a primordial portal into presence is the present moment. So that is always there. Coming into the present moment is an aspect of every practice that I have given. It always involves coming into whether you go into the body, whether you're aware of your breathing, whether you practice sensory perception without labeling. It always involves being more conscious and more fully in the present moment. So, therefore, an associated practice is to simply become aware of the present moment. And that's an amazing thing too, and it's so vital because there is nothing else. So if you never fully acknowledge the isness of this moment, you miss the whole thing, which is called your life. You miss the whole thing if you are not aware of the present moment. But how to be aware of the present moment encapsulates all that we have spoken about. First step, first level of being aware of the present moment is to be aware of your sense perceptions. It's the first step into the present moment. Then perhaps you're aware of your breathing and your inner body, and sense perception at the same time. So first you become aware where you are, what's around you, or what you're doing. And then you go deeper into the present moment, and the essence of the present moment is you. So the essence of what we call the present moment is consciousness. And consciousness is the space in which everything happens. Consciousness is the one thing that never changes, is the present moment. It's always now, it's always now. And what is the present moment in essence? In essence, the present moment is not what happens in the present moment. The deeper essence is the present moment is the space for whatever happens. And there's the space, like the canvas, however you want to call it. So you are aware of yourself ultimately as the present moment. And this realization that ultimately you are the present moment. Those words had not come to me when I was writing The Power of Now, so it never got into the book. Because the words came to me after I'd already written the book. Said, oh, I should have put that in. Oh, no, why didn't I put that in? Oh, you're no good. I didn't do that. So you sense the essence of what present moment really means as consciousness. The one thing that is beyond any doubt, that you are right now conscious. And that's not the right way of putting it. If I say you are conscious, you are consciousness is better. You are consciousness. Everything else could be a dream or an illusion, including this room and me talking. Am I dreaming this? He's talking, he's saying I may be dreaming this. Okay, maybe you are. Maybe all of sensory perceived so-called reality is a kind of dream. It's a way of looking at it. Certainly everything dissolves quickly. And then, where was it? Where is it gone? It's gone. And the dream dissolves too. But what remains beyond any doubt, even if it is all a dream, there needs to be a consciousness for the dream to be perceived. And you are that. But what scientists don't look at is their own consciousness. So you have the two realms, the two mysteries, the outer space and then the macrocosm, and you have the microcosm. For most fundamental mystery, the fact that the universe is conscious. That is the most amazing miracle.
Hi, Eckhart. My question is, when I try to maintain presence in my everyday life, I'm aware that my subconscious need for superiority sabotages me pretty regularly, and it happens very often. So I wonder what suggestions you have.
It would be nice for us to have one or two examples of how that looks.
I was afraid you would ask that. Typically when, like this morning, someone approached me and they were anxious and worried and off balance, and I thought, it's sort of an automatic thing, sort of, why don't you get your act together? And rather than just having a positive exchange. And then I notice, of course, when I'm anxious or off balance, I want everybody to be kind and understanding. So it's, I judge that as not a good thing. I would like to be more automatically kind.
Okay. One more example, perhaps?
One more? Okay, when my question was chosen and I was invited to be here, I was really excited about that, and it was tempting to think, and it was kind of my first thought that, oh, isn't this wonderful? I have this great question, but I quickly realized that in reality, that's it might be a pertinent question, but it's not about me, and it's not mean that it doesn't mean that I'm great. In other words. Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like a constant fight for me.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's very normal, that kind of mind activity. It's just, as awareness arises, it seems to be more of a problem than it would be for a normally unconscious person. Now, the good thing is that the awareness is there of it. If you were totally unconscious, that is identified with those thought patterns, you wouldn't even know it, because the essence of identification is you don't know it. You are it. You are the thought. So you would then, instead of feeling superior and realizing that you feel superior and then not wanting to feel superior, you would just feel superior. And that would be really unconscious. And that would be quite normal. Now, because awareness arises, that's a good thing. You're aware of certain mind patterns, subtle things where you feel superior or special. It's another word for it, that's specialness. Because specialness superior always implies better than. Specialness could also be, I'm much worse off than you, that's why I'm so special. My problems are much bigger than yours. Don't tell me about your problems. Let me tell you about mine. Or as my dad used to say, when people said, I have a headache, or whatever ache, that you have a headache? I've had a headache for weeks. That's not so much superiority, but, well, in a way it is. It's specialness. I'm more special than you because I have more headaches than you. I must be more interesting or whatever the reasoning behind it is. It's irrational, of course. So awareness is there, which is a decisive factor. It has come in. The awareness is aware of that mind pattern. Then, however, the awareness is obscured again by an additional mind pattern that says, I shouldn't be having these thoughts, which are more thoughts. So we have three things here in operation. There's the original thought pattern, harmless as it may be, but there's a recognition of the thought pattern, which comes from the fact that there's awareness. Through awareness, the thought pattern is recognized. But then the mind comes in again. It uses the awareness, the recognition that arose through awareness, to construct an additional level of problems which says I shouldn't be having those thoughts. I'm not a good person anymore if I have those thoughts. I'm not kind if I have those thoughts. And what is that? Thoughts. So it can happen that as awareness arises, which is a wonderful thing, you're not totally identified with the mind pattern anymore. And then the mind is so cunning that out of that recognition, it creates new mind patterns. And the new mind patterns say, I'm not a kind person if I think that. I mustn't think. I feel bad about thinking that. I shouldn't. By now I should be rid of that, whatever it says. So that's where you have to be careful to become aware that the mind has come in again after the awareness. That is not necessary. But you didn't know that. That was unconscious. So the mind has it's very cunning. You recognize the mind there, and then the mind comes back in again and uses your recognition to manufacture more thought out of that.
Right.
And this is why it's very good to ask that question. It helps everybody, so you are special.
Thank you.
But of course, everybody has similar problems, so we are all special. That's where once you're aware of that, you can then recognize that as unnecessary. You don't need that. It's superfluous mind activity that does nothing except strengthen your mind. And then you can simply allow the recognition to be there without the additional mental judgment of there's something wrong with you. And that in itself gradually dissolves the power of the mind pattern. All you need is the awareness of what your mind is doing. Then gradually, what your mind is doing becomes less dense, less powerful, and the awareness grows. So there's a shrinking of the mind pattern and a growing of the awareness. The only way the mind can stop that pattern is by, as I said, by coming in after the awareness and creating more thought around that. So just be happy with being aware. It's a mind pattern, it's nothing to do with who you are. You're not an unkind person, you're not whatever the mind says. It's just there's that mind pattern. Isn't that interesting? There it is. And that is in itself sufficient.
Great. Thank you so much.
And so right now I'm using certain concepts as signposts towards presence. But you may notice, especially if, and many of you are already going through this awakening process, you may notice in a way that you cannot explain. As I mentioned these words, there is a kind of recognition in you of what I'm talking about, but you would not be able to perhaps explain it. Because as I talk about presence as a state of consciousness, as I talk about it, there's not only the words which are signposts that are pointing towards it, there's also underlying the words and in between the words, there is already that state of presence. And this is then the hidden dimension of our gathering here. The hidden dimension of this gathering is deeper than words. And this is why sometimes I slow down a bit, it just happens, so that you don't attach excessive importance or give excessive attention to the words. They are helpful, but don't be like somebody who collects signposts and has a wonderful collection. Let's say the signposts say Rome or Mecca, and they point that way and say, oh, this is a beautiful signpost, I'm going to keep this and talk about it. And then after a while you confuse the signpost with the destination. So you don't become a collector of signposts, because then you become intellectually very knowledgeable, perhaps about spirituality, but you're like the proverbial person who writes a PhD about honey without ever having tasted honey. So there is a knowing, the possibility in you of accessing a knowing that is non-conceptual. And this is completely overlooked in our civilization, almost completely, because our civilization encourages the ability, even already in young children, to conceptualize and to analyze and to think. And the teacher asks a question, and the best students, according to the educational system, are those that immediately go, I know, that's not it. And then you begin to mistake names for the deeper reality of things. It starts with something like when the child learns language, and the child asks the parent, what's that? The child is looking at a big something, doesn't know yet what it is. What's that? And the dad or mum says, that's an oak tree. Oh, oak tree. Okay, thanks, Dad. And from then on, whenever the child looks at that kind of tree, he says, oh, that's an oak tree. And you confuse the naming with what it is. In many, many cases, when you think you know, it's only the illusion of knowledge, because you've attached labels to things. And the moment the mind attaches a label to a thing, the mind says, oh, now I know. Dad, how do birds find their way when they migrate every year from here to South America? And how do they find their way back to their nesting grounds the following year? How is that possible? Dad, please tell me. And the dad says, oh, that's easy. It's instinct. Oh, okay. You've attached a label, now you think you know how it works. Oh, it's by instinct they find. Then the exam comes, and right, by instinct, the birds find, oh, great, you get an A+. So part of this awakening of consciousness is to realize that there is a whole hidden, until now, or until recently, there is a whole dimension of consciousness in you that you had been unaware of, that you had always overlooked, a whole dimension that actually our whole civilization is continuously encouraging you to overlook. Just don't look there. And there are many ways in which we can approach talking about it, but more importantly, of course, we are here to deepen our experience of that dimension. And that dimension of consciousness, which in spiritual traditions, all the ancient teachers have pointed to it, using different kinds of signposts, which of course the collectors of signposts say, no, this signpost is totally different from that one. Look, they're totally different writing on it, and let's analyze it even more, not realizing they point exactly the same way. So the ancient teachings and teachers have spoken about it in various ways, whether they talk about liberation, awakening, salvation, or the Buddha in negative terms, the end of suffering, or another term the Buddha used is emptiness, which is not very inspiring, as you might have noticed, but it's very deep. If the Buddha says emptiness, he's giving you a signpost that is very hard to take and say, I believe in this signpost, because it's a negative term. But he's pointing to a certain state of consciousness, he's pointing to a certain realization, and he calls it emptiness. Very wise, because this discourages people from worshipping the signpost. You can worship the kingdom of heaven. It's the term that Jesus used. By the way, they talk about exactly the same thing, as you'll see in about 2 minutes. They talk about exactly the same thing, but the Buddha's, one of the key terms in Buddhism is sunyata, which means empty, translated as emptiness. That's an interesting choice of signposts, because you cannot worship or make an idol out of emptiness, but you can make an idol out of the kingdom of heaven, because then you can say, oh, where is it? It is somewhere, probably up there, and when am I going to get there? So you create space and time, and then the kingdom of heaven is a certain location, and you can even becomes part of your thought structure, and you begin to worship the kingdom of heaven, not realizing that it's a signpost. So emptiness, the Buddhist term emptiness, is closely related to the kingdom of heaven of Jesus. In churches, they won't explain it to you, of course. But, it's closely related. My translation of emptiness is spaciousness. And my translation of the kingdom of heaven is kingdom, in modern terminology, is dimension. Heaven is the vastness of the sky. This vastness of the sky stands for spaciousness. The dimension of spaciousness is the kingdom of heaven, which is Buddha's emptiness or spaciousness. Same thing or the same? No thing. And what is this thing? What is this dimension of spaciousness? It is a dimension within you. It is a dimension of consciousness that is possible for humans to access, although in most humans it only exists in seed form as a potential. Not that many humans have actually even begun to realize that that dimension exists in them, except you, and that's why you're here.
But there were several questions, a number of them, which I'd like to kind of lump together and address. And that had to do with pain in the body. That being related to the pain body. And different parts of the body. Some people had shoulder problems, some people had it in their face, in their hips, and various other places in their body. And as I mentioned, every thought, every emotion, if not processed fully, leaves an imprint in the body. So if there have been any trauma in your life, any just emotions that come up and that you haven't processed, it leaves an imprint in the body. And usually those imprints of emotions have a story. And each time you tell the story, either it's out loud or in your head, okay, we know that one where it goes around. It actually, the energy, because it's every thought and every emotion is energy, the story goes around, and if you believe that story, you believe, the event may have happened to you, yes. But if you actually sort of feed on that and then you allow the story to play around in your head and you tell somebody else, you know what happened to me, or you have this victim role where you just feed on that event, the emotion. And that's what the pain body does. The first time I realized what Eckhart meant, because Eckhart would sometimes say, we will feed the pain body, or, you connect with somebody else with a pain body and you feed off of each other. And I didn't really quite understand that. I kind of understood that intellectually. But there was one day where I was meditating and I was watching my pain body arise. So there's some old emotion there. Yes, I have a pain body and it will activate itself. And I was watching it because it was something very old. And something very old sometimes takes a long time to process. If it's been very traumatic, it will take a while in time to process. And then I had the story come up, the memory of the story. And I was able to witness that. And I saw that as soon as the story came up in my mind, it was like this energy ball that came down and fed right into my gut, where I was holding my pain body, where I could feel the pain. I was actually feeling the sensation of pain in my body. And I went, that's what Eckhart means by feeding the pain body. So if the story goes around in your head, keeps going around, and you play it out, it actually then makes this pain body bigger. So I went, okay, all right, now I understand. And then you're able then, that awareness is there that you can drop, you make that decision, and you don't follow the thought. But you stay connected to where you are feeling it internally, because that energy now is blocked in your body and it's something very old. And it has to be felt. You didn't feel it back then, so don't think you're going to get away with not feeling it now as it becomes active. And it's not you don't have to create it into a problem. It is not a problem. The mind thinks it's a problem, but it is not a problem. There is enough awareness in you where you are now able to free the pain body. Hallelujah. So when you feel it, hallelujah, really, truly, because your awareness is there and all you just have to do is just feel it. And sometimes it is so intense, and the reaction, the habit, is to be able to run away from it because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to feel it. We go, oh, no, not this, not this. Or when will this stop? As soon as you have those thoughts, you're not in acceptance mode. You're in resistance mode. So the only way out is through. Yes. Yeah, the only way out is through. And will that pain last forever? No. It feels like it will, but it won't. It won't. So we just feel that and allow that, your awareness, the shining the light of consciousness on the energy itself within the body, and then it will dissolve or transmute, transform. It'll change. Maybe it'll start to dissipate, and the energy then can run freely. And then your energy body opens up, and the life force that is naturally and just always here, flowing within, can then flow. And there's a release. Sometimes it's a big release, sometimes it's a quiet release, but there's just a release. Now, it doesn't mean that it won't come up again, because it may come up again. Don't go into your head and think that, okay, well, I forget to feel this once and I want it gone. Usually it doesn't work that way. Life will bring something about to activate that dormant state of pain body so that we can release it and become free human beings. There was one here where somebody had hip replacements, 2 hip replacements, and with something like that, or changing something that's in the body, inviting a foreign object in the body, it takes time for the body then to be able to coexist with something that is foreign, and it will coexist. And there might even be a grieving process, because it's a loss of something. It's like losing a limb. So the body experience this, oh, geez, what's going on here? Something's different is happening. And there could be an experience of a loss, and a loss also on the emotional level. So pain can actually be our teacher and our alarm clock. Because when our body's in pain, it's saying, hey, pay attention here. Wake up, don't go away. Feel this, release this. So I invite you to bring that awareness, the acceptance, into your practice when the pain body arises. And then when you think the pain body is completely gone, as Ram Dass says, go home and to your parents for a week. Ultimate test. And not just there for a moment and pop out. Stay with them for a week. But life will show you, because we are evolving here, and that evolution calls for the release of all things old, so that we can stand new and fresh with this beautiful vessel that we have been given, so that life can bring forth a more conscious way of relating and living in this world.
Sometimes there's awareness there, and there's the pain body there, and you've chosen awareness, and not that the pain body goes away, but then you get to almost like witness your pain body. So you're not in a reaction mode. You can feel the energy of the pain body, but you witness it. Maybe some words may come out, and you witness that. And you might go, oh my goodness, why did I say that? But you remain present in that awareness, because sometimes this pain body has something to teach us. So don't be in a hurry, into a rush to think that and desire that you have no more pain body. Because to tell you the truth, without this pain body, I would not be sitting up here today. And same with Eckhart. Without that pain body that he experienced, he would not be here today teaching. Now, it seldom happens with people to be free of the pain body and free of the ego virtually overnight, like it happened with Eckhart. And if some of you are wanting that, but I want that, I want it gone, and I want it gone now and never to come back, you are in your mind. That is a thought. It can be gone right now if you choose the present moment and choose the unconditioned self. It could be gone right now. And only the mind will come in and bring in time and start thinking, oh, but will it be gone forever? This moment is forever. There's only ever this moment. Time, and it's useful, is a concept. And we all agree what time it is. What time it is here in Greece. What time it is in Germany. What time it is in Canada. Those are all agreements that we have made. And we forget that it is just a concept. There is no time. But this time as a concept is useful because it gets us, say, for example, here. Otherwise, if we didn't have this concept of time, it may take us 1,000,000 years for all of us to get here and be with each other. So it's useful. Concepts are useful, but we forget that it's just a concept. Just as we say, we are in Greece. Yes, that's a concept. We are in Greece. But does Greece really exist? Does Canada exist? Does the USA exist? No, it's just a concept. And yet we believe in this concept that we are willing to fight for that concept. We are willing to kill to keep that concept alive. And yet it doesn't exist. So if no time exists, your name doesn't even exist, your gender doesn't even exist, the countries don't exist, what is there? Look within. It's that sense of self. The self with a capital S, that stillness, the essence of who we are, the nothingness, the Tao that cannot be named. Your God essence, consciousness, your Buddha nature. So all these are names that point to the formless dimension. I've had many people experience that formless dimension, and then they'll experience a thought. Now what? What's next? It's that momentum of the mind that will keep going and keep itself alive for a while. And not that the mind, it's not that the mind, we want it to go away. We just don't want that mind to be controlling us with those thoughts. And they're habitual thoughts. But it's that nothingness, that no-thingness. To be comfortable with that emptiness. So I like the Buddha's teaching where you couldn't really hang on to anything. How can you hang on to emptiness? It's formless. To be comfortable with that. At first, when that formless dimension arises in you and you're aware of it, it feels a little bit like getting into an elevator. And you're alone, and it's okay being alone, and then somebody enters, and then it's that awkward feeling. So become comfortable with the unknown. No thought is it. No emotion is it. No experience that you have is it. I used to travel to India quite a bit to go meditate in the caves and visit spiritual teachers in India. And I remember being in this temple, and suddenly I was just had this magnificent experience. Oh my gosh. I saw the sky open up, and I saw angels. And I heard music where I don't even know where it was coming from, but it wasn't coming from the earthly realm. And it was just like, oh my God, wow, this is incredible. It's like, I saw God. And that evening I went to go visit a spiritual teacher, and I told him of my experience. And he says to me, "That's not it." I go, no, you didn't hear it. Maybe you didn't hear me. I saw angels. I saw God. I heard music. The sky opened up. That's not it. And this went back and forth, me repeating myself, really believing that I saw angels, I saw God, etc. And him just saying, that's not it. And his wife who was there said, I'm going to bed. And so I don't know, maybe 20 minutes went by going back and forth. He would just repeat the same thing. That's not it. That's not it. And me really determined to think, no. I experienced it. I saw it. That's not it. And then suddenly, after the last time of saying, that's not it, I understood. I didn't have to repeat it anymore. That's why it was the last time. I went, oh my God, you're right. No experience is it. We've all perhaps had that wonderful, profound meditation where you're sitting there and you just like, wow. You finish the meditation and you go, oh my God, that was great. Wow. That was incredible. And then the next day, you come to sit in your sitting meditation, and hidden behind in the background in your mind is that you want the same experience. And you're just sitting there trying to get that same experience. Of course, that experience will never happen again. And then you finish that meditation, you go, oh, damn it, why didn't I have that same experience? You will never have the same experience. If you want the same experience, you are holding on to the past. And you will never experience this moment again, which may or may not be more profound than the last experience.